everybody, and welcome to Acrylic Painting with Shannon Chiba. It is a pleasure to have you guys paint with me today. Today we're going to be painting a really fun and easy tropical themed piece. It's going to be tons of fun, and I hope that you guys have a good time painting this. Hopefully this whisks you away to the tropics. You know, we've all been stuck inside during the pandemic, so now it's time to just sort of get a little bit of fun, a little bit of relaxation back into our lives, and hopefully we can do that with a little bit of acrylic painting. So in front of me here, I have the 16 by 20 canvas. I also have a few colors of paint. I have white, I have blue, I have red, and I have some yellow here. And I have it on a plain paper plate. You can use whatever you have at home. You want to have some paper towels at the ready, some at the standby, just in case you want to correct a mistake or, pick up any drips. Definitely have a few brushes for yourself here. I have some large, medium, and small brushes here that I'm going to be using from time to time. You want some water. You should probably have a trash bucket nearby. And just make sure you have an easy, fun, and relaxed attitude. And so let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to be adding a sun. And what I like to do whenever I have my piece is I like to use the white that is in the canvas, okay? So I'm going to start with my large brush here. And I'm not going to be using water. I'm going to be this is a dry brush technique. And what I'm going to do to start is I'm going to find the center of the canvas. And I'm going to go a little bit higher here, maybe about 3 or 4 inches. And I'm going to make a circle like a donut, okay? Just with my yellow and a dry brush. You want enough paint on it to get yourself started. All right, so you see how I have just this circle here, and I'm keeping that white in there. The white will be the sun. Now, if you don't like your circle, you can always come back later on with your white and you can make it a little bit larger. All right, so from this white circle, which is our sun, we're building this halo. We started with that yellow donut, and we're just really, really lightly and loosely going to go around it. Very soft touch here as we touch the canvas, very gently with our brush. Here and there you can throw in little bits of yellow as we go around the sun. Not a lot, just a few. All right. Now it's really important when we're painting that you want to make sure whenever you switch colors that you have a clean brush, okay? So a clean brush is necessary to change colors. So what I'm going to do is whenever I change colors, I take some of that old paint off of my brush with that paper towel. And then I go into my water and I get it nice and clean. So you'll see me doing this from time to time, and just make sure whenever you do this, whenever you change colors, that you're keeping your brush nice and clean. All right, so now from this yellow, we're gonna make some orange. So what we do is we add just a little bit of your red to your yellow and you swirl it around. I hope you can see this. And you swirl it around and you make a pretty orange. Okay, the more red you add to that, the darker orange it'll be. We want it kind of light, so keep it mostly yellow. All right, and we can start to build and fill in some of those voids. Remember, a really soft touch here with that orange as we spin around our pretty sun all the way around. And as you go further and further out from your sun, it's a lighter and lighter touch, okay? Nice and soft around that. You can start to blend it a little bit if you like into the yellow. All right, so you want something that looks kind of like this. All right, everybody's painting will be different, so just enjoy the experience and have fun with it. Now the next color that I want to add is a pretty pink, and so pink is made with red and white. I'm going to be changing colors again. You always want to start with your lighter color whenever you're mixing colors. So I'm going to start with my white and gradually add little bits of red in there so I can make a vibrant pink. All right. So I have lots of white up top here, and I just take a little bit of my red and I swirl it around until I get a shade of pink that I like. And I think this is a pretty pink here. It's almost like a bubble gum. You can make it definitely much more vibrant and much more neon by adding more and more red to your piece. Okay, so you can see how it starts to get a little bit darker with the pink. And so what we can do now is we can start to add little bits of red and pink as we go out around our pretty sun here. I'm swirling in this pretty pink. I'm not really caring where I put it, just having fun here, okay? You just don't want to go too close to your sun. It's good to have these vibrant, bright blips of that pretty pink in there, a little bit darker. You don't want to blend it too much because you want to have the feeling that these are, you know, some wispy clouds catching the pretty colors there as we go around and around. All right, so a little bit more here as we pull in some of that pretty pink. And then if you want to blend it, now you can add some water. Now you don't need a lot of water and you certainly don't want drips, so just get your brush a little bit wet. You can tap it off on your paper towel if it's too wet for you. And now you can bring just that water in there with a little bit of pink and begin to blend it even more. If you push on your brush from time to time, you can sort of eke out a little bit more of that color. But as long as you're keeping it nice and a soft touch, that's the blending. And a little bit of that water, that's where your blending comes in. Isn't that pretty? Remember, don't go too close to your sun here. And if you like something, and I say this all the time, you need to leave it alone. Don't, go back over it if you really love it. So I'm loving this pink right here, and so I'm going to resist the urge to paint right there. And bring a little bit more of my blending around. You just don't want white. You don't want to see the white in the background. You want to cover all of your canvas and embrace those little differences in the canvas. It's not all going to be flat. It's not a photograph. All right, so the next color that I want to bring in is a pretty purple. I'm going to wash my brush again, and I'm going to start with my red this time. And I'm going to add a little bit of blue to it. So here's my red. I'm going to add a little bit of that blue to it, and all of a sudden it makes this gorgeous purple. Isn't that pretty? So the more red you add to it, the more plum, and the more blue, the more grape. And I really like that purple here, so I'm going to embrace that purple. And the purple is the next layer that comes in right here on the corners. This gives us a little bit of, some clouds that might be overhead. So I'm just swiping really gently and loosely. Some of that water is helping on the canvas, is helping that purple to sort of disperse a little bit here. And I'm just tapping. At first, I was going around in that, swipey donut kind of a shape. Now I'm just tapping really loosely, a little bit more of the purple in the corners here. You can even bring some of these pretty swipes in here. Try not to go over anything you like. I don't want to get rid of that pretty pink that I had there. And you can just very, very softly, always softly as you come closer to the sun, and definitely nice and vibrant as you go away from it, okay? And we can't forget these sides here of the canvas. These are called the lips. And so since it was really a dark purple here, I'm going to go ahead and carry that color all the way around. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I definitely like it a little bit darker and thicker here as we go around. You can also do this at the end of the painting if you choose. It's just a little harder because you might have used up your shade of a color and you might not be able to match it. You just want the idea that your painting is wrapping around. You just don't want these bright white sides, okay? Now the thing when you're making a beautiful landscape painting, especially with the water, one thing that's important to realize is that the water is darker and reflective. So you have to make a few decisions here. I want the water. The water now, we've dictated the color up top. We want to make sure that we're going to mirror that down below. So definitely going to have a yellow spot in here, definitely some oranges and some purples right down in here. But I have to have, you know, a level spot for my ocean to start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that all of my sky is painted up. Add a little bit more of that pink here. Paint the side. Make sure whenever you're painting, you know, get in a good mood. And, you know, this is a vacation piece. Have one of your favorite drinks handy. Play some music. You know, I love, personally, my favorite vacation music is Jimmy Buffett and Bob Marley, for sure. Toots and the Maytals is also a favorite of mine. I have lots of favorites. I love music. Music is definitely inspiring. All right, a little bit more water there on the bottom, and I'll show you why. You want to blend it. So as you come down here, right before we add the water, let's get the motion of the ocean going and sort of blend it with a little bit of water and these colors we already have on the canvas before we start our ocean. Make sure you're wrapping it, wrapping all your colors around as you go, okay? I really like this so far. It's very pretty, very pink, purple, a little bit of coral in there. All right, so again, back to our decision. We're going to come in with that yellow. We're just going to mirror what we did, but we're going to make our brush go back and forth horizontally. So we'll start with our yellow here. I have a few other colors in my brush, so you got to make sure that you get some of that extra color off. I don't mind if some of the orange carries, but you don't want purple and yellow because it makes brown. All right, so here we go. We're just going right under where the sun is. Horizontal swipes here. Isn't that pretty? And you want to make sure that this line right here, you got to keep it kind of level. You don't want to go up and invent some waves just yet. Nice and flat. And so we start with a larger swipe, and as we go further and further down here, we're going to get a little shorter with our swipes. We're going to come right underneath. We're going to keep going as far down as you want. This should look like a reverse or an inverted Christmas tree here. All right, nice and long there. And you should have some of your colors already here on your canvas, on your palette rather. So I'm going to pick that pink back up, but remember the ground here, the water is always darker. So I'm going to bump up that pink with a little bit more red, and I'm going to cut in. So here's the pink. Here's a big spot of pink. I'm going to come right down here, making that reverse image. I'm not going to go too far into my yellow, but I definitely want it to blend. So I'm going to bring some of that pretty pink right here. You can never tell unless you're really, really structured in your painting what your painting is going to look like. So you can paint this exact same piece and have a different result many, many times. Make sure as you go back and forth, it's a really, really soft, light touch, okay? If you have a hard touch, you're gonna end up with a stop mark. You see that? You wanna avoid that stop mark, just a nice, soft, blended touch here. And try to get all that color off your brush before you go into a new color. I would definitely have some pink on that side as well. I'll grab my palette and start to build that pink. And right about here. Don't be afraid to experiment with your colors because you can always go over your painting and you can layer your colors. As Bob Ross says, happy accidents, because everybody loves a little variety, and it's very easy with paint to actually cover up your mistakes. So you can go back and forth. See how it's blending? It looks so pretty. And start to continue and carry it up. Just a little bit of water will help that paint to stretch. We'll add our purple down here last. We've got to finish up this side here. So make sure if you're painting at home, you can take your time. You can, when this video is live, you can stop it, you can come back to it, step by step. Don't feel rushed. When you're on vacation, you should never feel rushed. We're on a painting vacation right now. All right, and so I'm just gonna bring down a little bit more of my color with some water, and then we'll get in there with that pretty purple. Now I'm not adding any blue just yet to this piece, because if you mix the blue with the yellow, you end up with green. We don't want a green sky. We don't want green water. Maybe a little teal is okay, but we don't want the green in there just yet. So we let this dry a little bit before we get in there with some other colors. We have to make sure that we're adding our colors here on the side. I'll grab my pink, perhaps a little bit of white on there, and start to fill in some of the side here. Try not to wrap it this way. Short, quick swipes as we go up the side. We don't want to ruin the center of your painting. All right, now here's that purple again. A little lighter up top, it's like a lavender. So now we're going to bring that purple back, a little bit darker this time, so a little bit more blue in the mix. Swirl it up well. If you don't swirl your colors well, you end up with multiple colors, which can be nice in its own right, but we want to stick with that purple right now. And so we'll bring in these long horizontal swipes of the purple. So it's a shadow color. And so what's happening here is this, it'll give you the idea that there is a wave right here. Okay, so it's lifting up the water that's behind it. Okay, so you can actually take your purple. You have to be careful because once it goes into the orange, it turns brown. If you want to orient your brush horizontally like this, you can swipe in a few swipes like this. You can go over here. Very, very soft though, because as you go back up, as you go up towards the horizon line, you need really, really light and soft wave lines. Really, really soft and very, very thin, okay, because they're further away. Things that are in front of us are larger using perspective. So if you wanted to throw in a bigger swipe here, gives it a little bit more of that realism. A little bit more of the purple. So you can create these chunky waves, just going back and forth, just bounce your brush. Know when to stop, okay? Really important. When you like it, just assess. So take a few moments to breathe it out. Look at your piece and try to decide when you have too much purple. You can always come back in with your other colors, yes, yes. But why create extra work for yourself? That's not what we want to do. All right, I really like that. Maybe a few more swipes of that pretty purple to give it a little bit more. Try not to be too structured. This is kind of an impressionist piece. Don't think too much about it. I want to maintain some of this pretty yellow in there, so I'm not going to go over it too much with my purple. And blend out any stop marks that you might have. Is it whisking you away yet? It's whisking me away. I feel like I'm on vacation for sure. The next thing that we want to add is some of our blues. We can have some teals in there, which is really nice. You just don't want a vibrant green just yet. So I'm going to take all of that paint off of my brush and I'm going to go back into the water. I just use a regular bucket that I get from a local store. It's much easier to wash your paint off and it gives you a lot more water to work with. Always take your brush and go over the lip of your bucket or your glass, whatever you're using, and you're ready to go again. All right, so I have a pretty blue here, and you know, your blue can be either on the green scale, well, it can be a warm or a cool blue. I'm just using regular plain blue on my brush here, and I'm going to add a little bit of white to it just to lighten it up a little bit. So you end up with like a sky blue color. Isn't that beautiful? All right. I'm not going to use a ton of it because I want to maintain these pretty soft colors here. But here and there, very, very softly, especially up by my purple, really soft touch here. Maybe move your brush in an X pattern. You just want to add some of these blue touches so you get the idea that it could be the morning. This is more of a morning piece, okay? Because what happens is with the sky, in the morning you have light, soft pastel colors, and definitely with a sunset you have some more warm oranges, definitely warmer, darker colors, okay? I'm not bothered by these swipe lines I have in here because I'm gonna add a little bit of water and I'm gonna blend it. Don't forget to tap your brush off on your paper towel. See what that water does? It just blends all those colors together. Sometimes it'll reveal a little bit of that canvas in the back. That's okay, because a little bit of that white will look pretty. You can actually erase some of your painting that way by getting in there with some water, maybe like a harder bristle brush, and do some scrubby action. And then you can see little bits of the white. Now I like the white coming through because it looks like little bits of puffy clouds beginning to show. So embrace the natural voids and the things that happen in your canvas when that shows. Okay, a little bit more here. And now I'm going to create a little bit more of that blue down here in the water. Most of that should have dried down here. So now I'm going, remember, a little bit darker in the water. So I'm going to bring a few of those little bits, just quick swipes back and forth, quick and soft now, of the blue. Try not to go over your sunspot. You're just mirroring what is above is happening below. And as you go further up the canvas, soft lines, very, very soft lines, really thin too. Try to make sure that top of your brush is very horizontal, okay? I'm really liking the colors here. I think I'm gonna add a little bit of teal just to give it that Caribbean flair that everybody loves so much. Now you already have the blue on your brush, no need to wash it off. All you have to do is just take a little bit of that yellow and swirl it with the blue. Now the thing is, it turns really green really fast. You want definitely more blue in your mix than yellow, and it brings it to this pretty Caribbean color. You don't want equal parts blue and yellow, definitely more blue, okay? And if you want to add a little bit of white to it, a little bit of white will definitely soften it up and bring it to this Caribbean teal. It's gorgeous, okay? So we can add a little bit of that, not much, remember, soft touch, up above, really, really light now. You're just inventing some wispy clouds, not getting too close to your original yellow donut here. If you go close to it, you just have to have a soft, really soft touch, bringing it around. You can cover now anything that you don't like. Well, that was a big cloud. That's okay, though. It's kind of nice when you have those big clouds in there, okay? And then just nice and soft. That's so pretty. Now we're going to bring a little bit more of it down below. Remember, a little bit darker, so perhaps just a tiny bit more blue in your teal. And we're going to carry it. So right here, I made that little bit of a larger cloud. So I'm going to bring some of that in there so that it looks like it's reflecting, okay? And then there's some right here. Bring some of that teal there. There's definitely some on this side. Bring some here. Right up above the sunspot here, there's a little bit more of that teal. So we can add here. Definitely more of it over here. Just building the reflection. Make sure you're paying attention to perspective, softer, lighter touch as you go up top. Okay. And this is pretty gorgeous. What do you think? Okay. We're still going to add some palm trees and some islands in the background. So we're going to mix up a little bit of a pretty brown. You could use purple. You could also use black if you wanted to. Black is an option, but black is not found in nature very often. That's usually like the center of an eye. You know, sometimes you'll find it deep nighttime paintings, outlines mostly with anime, not very often in a painting, okay? So I usually don't use black. All right, I'm gonna wipe my brush off, make sure it's nice and clean. And now I'm gonna start to make some decisions here. I definitely want a few islands in the back. The islands are going to stick right here, level, sea level. And then I'm going to bring up maybe a few more islands here, and then we're gonna bring up our beautiful palm trees, just going right over it and cascading over it. It's gonna be so pretty. But I'm going to be using smaller details now. With the larger brush, we do the background. Now we're gonna switch our brush. If you have one, if you only have one brush, that's fine too. You just make sure you make a smaller shape. This is a medium brush here, and this is pretty good. We've already made like this pretty dark purple here. I'm gonna bump it up even darker. I'm gonna use my blue with my purple, and I'm definitely going to swirl it so that it's almost black. Acrylic painting dries about 3 shades darker than what it goes on the canvas. So while it may not look completely dark to you right now, it will later, trust you me. Okay, so I have my medium brush and I have it saturated with this purple. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a dot on the right and left side of my horizon line. You want it mostly level, okay, if you can, okay? And you're gonna start to build your paintings like this. The first thing you're gonna do is very softly, orienting your brush horizontally, you're gonna come out and you're gonna make mostly kind of like this really level line, okay? It's almost like a hair. So it comes out and you pull away from the canvas. That is the start of my island or my distant island. Same thing here. I push on the canvas a little bit, and as I come across, I kind of like pull. So you get the idea of like a shore. Now it doesn't have to be completely flat on the bottom. You see here there's a few like little edges. That's okay. It looks like it's a curved beach. But what you want to do is you want to start to build your island now. So my island is just a set of kind of like loose and organic hills. You can make your island come out a little further, but it's really hard to get it to shorten up at this point. So as you go, just sort of keep assessing it and see how you want your island, the shape to go. I'm going to give it a few rolling hills here. I'm going to push on my brush and get that color right into that canvas, and I'm going to pull off. Maybe there's a little distant island right here, right in the center. I don't want it to overtake my piece, so I'm going to pull it out a little bit further. Maybe some rocks. If you want to invent some rocks here, you can do that too. A few swipes here. Oh, that's so pretty, isn't it? You can add, since we added some rocks there, you can add a few here. They have to be a little bit more in focus as they get closer to you though. So keep that in mind. A little bit crisper, a little bit more paint, a little bit more of a sharper image. Okay. Swirl it up. Put it in there. Definitely thicker with that paint in the center of it. The outside can be a little hazy because that's referent light, and the light can touch the outside, make it seem a little softer. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I am, I love it. And I think the next thing that I want to do is I want to invite you into the piece with some palm trees. So I am going to put a larger island right here in the corner and perhaps one over here in the distance. So it's almost like you're winding around the piece. But like I said earlier, what you have to do is things that are closer to you, they're much more vibrant, much more paint. So I'm going to go in there with some good color, and I'm going to create a hill. You're going to go over some of your old paint there, just layering right over it with that purple. Creating a nice edge to our island here. If you need to add a little bit of water to your mix, you can. Just make sure that you're keeping it nice and vibrant. Sometimes a little bit of water helps your paint to flow really nicely. And I'm going to add a little bit more of one over here. So here's this island right in front of us, right? So there's going to be one maybe right about here. No goals, no glory. Get in there. Don't even think about it. Don't overthink it. You've got this. I got a little bit more blue on my brush there, but that's all right. Bring some some red in and kind of head on into that yellow. Remember the same thing. You don't want to end your island with a cliff. You want to end it as before with this point. Okay. As it begins to touch that yellow, it might darken up and turn a brown. That's okay now because sand and the earth is brown. So we'll have a larger palm tree arching up and it'll go right here, and maybe a smaller one off in the distance, okay? Make sure we're sharpening up these edges. Nice and thick. Push on your canvas to get a nice sharp beaded edge. And this one here, I'm gonna add a little bit more red too, just to darken it up. Okay, and now is my favorite part where we add our beautiful palms. And I want you to think of this like a firework, all right? So what I want to do first is I want to take that purple that we've been working with. I want to choose where just the center of my palm tree is going to go. I definitely want one of the focal points to be this pretty sun right here in the middle, right? So what I'm going to do is I like to hold up my brush too, or your hand, and try to figure out where about you want your palm tree head to be. I'm going to say right about, I want it might be a little higher, right about here. I make a dot. And then over here, this one here, it's a little smaller. Bring my palm tree up, maybe right about here, okay? A little bit of, in line, but you're gonna break up your palm heads with this going on here. So whenever you look at your canvas and you wanna make a piece, your eye should flow around the whole thing. You should find a little bit of interest in every little spot, all right? So now I'm gonna add a little bit more of the water to my brush that already has my pretty purple on it, and I'm going to add my trunks. All right, so this is where the end of my trunk will be. I'm going to start down below here, and I'm going to push on my canvas where I want my trunk to start. I'm going to say right about here. I'm going to push, and I'm going to come up, and as I come up, I'm going to pull away from my canvas a little bit, and I get like this long hair. I always like to compare images to things we see in our day-to-day lives. It makes it much easier to understand and paint. So this long hair, and remember, as you go up, you're gonna add a little bit more paint. You're still gonna pull. You're gonna pull away from the canvas a little bit, so you're just getting this really soft tip, okay? Again, doesn't have to be a perfect straight line. In fact, you don't want a straight line. You want these little bumps and bits in there so that you can tell it looks kind of like an actual real tree, okay? Now you can take the same brush. This is going to be smaller, this palm over here, because it's further off in the distance. So again, you're gonna come down and decide where you want the center to be. I'm gonna say right about here. I'm gonna push on my canvas and I'm going to lift. It's softer, it's smaller. Clearly not as large as this one here. And you can reinforce the center of your trees with a little bit of that purple. You don't want it too hazy. A little haziness is okay because it looks like the sun is setting or rising and hitting the outside, okay? And then remember the firework I was describing earlier? What we want is we want to pull down and away from the center of our palms a firework. Now I like to use a smaller brush for this. You can use a larger brush, for perhaps one's palms that are closer to you, but as you go further off in the distance, like this one over here, you definitely want a tiny brush. So I'll show you both methods. So I'm going to use that brush here, and I'm going to load it with that paint, and I'm going to touch or tap the center of that pretty palm, right? And then I'm going to come away from it. I'm going to, use those hairs. I'm going to push closer to the center of the palm, and as I come away, I'm making that firework, and I'm making these palms arch just a little bit down. So a little bit straighter and up in the air as you go towards the top. And as you come down, just like a firework, it's sort of drooping down and falling back to the sky. Okay, see that? And what you want to do is you can also, the center of this palm, it has like some coconuts and some dead palms in the center, so I like to tap a little bit under it and pull a few of those coconuts and dead palms down. Okay. You can add other colors to this later, make it look a little bit more vibrant. I'm gonna add a little bit of those here too, on this side. Okay. So now I'm gonna wash this brush off, and I'm gonna show you what it looks like when we start with the tiny brush. Tiny brush is almost always exclusively for details or really, really tiny pieces. So this is my tiny brush. Get it a little bit wet to start, just so that those bristles kind of stick together. And here is my pretty purple. Okay, you remember that purple again? Hello, friend. And then we'll be adding a little bit more of that red to the mix here. All right, swirl it well. You don't want globs. With a tiny brush, I like to glide my brush back and forth in the paint before I start. It helps to bring all of those little bristles together. And so we have our palm tree here. I'm going to add our palm tree here. Sort of the same thing. We go up and then out, down. A little bit more of that water will help that paint to spread. And now we'll start working on the fronds. So you have the center of your palm here, all right? And the fronds come out like a feather. And make sure you have enough of that paint on there. And you start with larger swipes, and as you go further and further down to this tip, smaller. You do these V's. You start to make your V go outwards, and as the V's go down the frond, the center of it, gets smaller and smaller. So let me show you. We go here with these larger swipes, just V's. You're going back and forth, away from the center. You're coming out. Now they don't have to be perfect V's now. Some of your fronds might have a little wiggle and a little jiggle. They're moving because there might be a little bit of wind. As we come down, they're softer and maybe a little smaller. Okay, how pretty is that? Isn't that beautiful? So you continue to add them. Remember, no rhyme or reason. You're on vacation, you're relaxing, having a good time. Okay, you want to embrace those little bits of paint that come a little bit thicker and a little bit thinner. I'm not using a ton of water here because I want to get some of that referent light in there. I want them to build. It's a little bit more blue now in my purple mix, a little bit more of a shadow color. But your shade of purple can be totally different. I added a little curly Q up there just because. And I just know that it's important to relax and have fun whenever you're painting. So let this be a fun, really fun part where you can let loose here and painting these palm fronds, okay? You can invent some, okay? You don't have to have that structure we built before. So say I want to add one up here. Remember, pointing a little bit more up for the ones up top. And as you go backwards, you can add one maybe really softly. It has to be soft though, because you're in the background now. You can't see it as vividly as the ones in the front. Add a few more swipes here. All Right, now I'm going to add a few more of my shades of my purple in here, a little bit of a different shade. So play around with your blue and your red mix. I'm going to add a little bit more blue. That's pretty. Somewhere on the purple scale. And you can add a little bit more of that purple going right down the trunk. I think I need one more cute little palm frond here. Step back from your piece from time to time and decide what you want to live where. Right here. Oh, that's pretty. Maybe one more up top. And then we'll start to work on that smaller palm tree. Oh, I like that. How tropical. So nice. Okay, so now this smaller one here, I'm going to add a little bit more of my water to my brush because I want this carry a little better. I want it to be a little thinner. I use my pinky and I brace it on the canvas and it gives me more control. You definitely need a little bit more control here as you start to build your palm fronds. It's a smaller, thinner swipe, of course, because we're in the background. And use that pinky to pull, to brace you and to pull these beautiful swipes coming down here. My husband always jokes with me, I say beautiful a lot, but you know what? It's a great word. It's a great word. There's so much joy and beauty in our lives. A few more of these pretty swipes. Now it's further away, so you might not see all of them. Sometimes you might just see a swipe like this. Okay? And it's a little bit thicker and a little bit less in focus. Okay? But sometimes you can get really super detailed with your palms and just make each individual one. Bring in some of that blue in there, a little softer colors in the background. This blue, as I bring it down and I swipe it into the center of my palm and into the center of my frond and my trunk, just want to have a real soft and loose touch. I'm going to get in there in my island now with a little bit of that blue. I'm going to invent perhaps some rocks in there, perhaps a little bit of, you know, your sand. Over here in the center here of this island, maybe some larger rocks with that blue. Depending on the shade of blue, it could be a highlight or it could be a shadow. Definitely more of a highlight here. Throw a few of them here, maybe a few of these rocks over here will catch a little bit more of the light. Now the background here, right here where the beautiful islands are, you can throw a little bit of that blue right there in those islands. Don't go over your trunk though. Skip your trunk. And throw a little bit more of that blue here on the island. And I'd say this is almost complete. What we do need to do though is we have to add the last bit, which is a bright white highlight. Some of that sun, we'll catch it right here in the water and we'll pull it straight down and maybe add a little bit of a highlight on some rocks. So keeping that in mind, go straight down here, you can add a few rocks that might catch some of that beautiful sun. A little bit of that highlight will be stunning. So I want a few here that will catch it. All right, just inventing them. Right. Oh, that looks good. I need a little bit more of that blue here in this cute little island here. That's nice. All right, so, wow, stunning. I would hang this in my mudroom, wouldn't you? All right, now I'm gonna make sure that this brush is completely, I cannot have any paint on it at all. I'm gonna wash it really, really well. Make sure that no purple, nothing is on it. Keep washing away. And, you know, make sure that you have plain white. Your white can't be mixed with any other color now. I put a ton of the white on my palettes. Not intentionally, but it's there. We're going to use it. And, you know, this is where you can get in there to that sun and make sure now that it's mostly circular. So I like to take my pinky. This is dry here around it. Acrylic takes 15 to 20 minutes to dry. And I'm going to make sure that it's nice and round, okay? Make sure you have enough of that white on there. I put a little bit of that lemon yellow in there by accident, but that's okay. I can hit it back with some white later. You can get a beaded edge with a little bit more pressure around the exterior of your sun. Some people like to find an object in their house that has a round edge, a piece of old PVC pipe or sometimes a glass, and trace around it, then fill in the void. I like that. I like to add texture towards the end, and I don't know if you can see that, but if you dab that with a ton of your paint, it will dry like that. You want to make sure it does not drip though. You do not want drips in your piece. Okay. You can spin it around a little bit and just get, you know, some fun motion in your piece. All right, now here's where we make this really awesome highlight in the water, but you want to make sure it's right. It's got to be dead center on. So I like to take my brush, okay, and I like to go right up to my piece here. I want to make sure that it's right in line, okay? So I know it's right in line here. I go right down and I make a little dot right there. And I try to get in line with that, and I'm going to end my highlight right about here, okay? So once again, center, dot on the horizon, and then another little dot right at the bottom. Now highlights, as it hits the water, what you're doing is you're going to define your waves. Anywhere where there's a wave, this highlight's going to pick it up, okay, and it's going to just rest right on top of it. So just like before, our swipes and our lines, you can't really see them too much here towards the top. So what we're going to do is really, really soft, easy lines. Again, your hand does not need to stay completely flat, okay? You can embrace the little movements with your breath that happens because it makes it look like it's natural waves. So I'm taking my brush and I'm going back and forth, and as I come away, my highlight gets a little bigger, a little softer, okay? And I'm pushing on my brush and I'm just hitting right where the tops of my waves would be. So we've sort of defined our shadows here with our purple. So above the purple, if I add a swipe of that white above the purple, it looks like there's a pretty, you know, a little crest, a little bit of that sea spray in the top of a wave that's coming down right and over. So nice. All right, remember those rocks? Now we can sort of hit the tops of the rocks with a little bit of that highlight. Okay. That's cute. Maybe there's a little bit of sea spray going around them and hitting all around our pretty rocks here. Some bright white bits. Now as we come down a little bit further, our waves get a little larger. You can switch to a medium brush, or you can just have fun with a tiny brush going back and forth. I love how the paint drips. There's a little drip there, and it sort of looks like it's spilling over my shadow. So find your shadows, go right on top of them, and maybe do a little spill. See that? Isn't that nice? And remember those rocks? We can go around them again. Real soft touch, just the top, just the top. Don't go behind them, okay, this away, because what's going to happen, I know that I did that up here, but there's a shadow here. You only want one side, okay? A few swipes here, bring that color in. Hit those tops of the rocks here. You can even on the top of your island here, really, really softly if you want, you can add a little bit of highlight just to give it a little bit of a 3D effect. Really see, highlight and low light really make your piece pop. All right, so I'm just gonna go right here and go right around my island. Really soft touch, okay? I'm not gonna do it too much to the palms because I don't want them to be so like in your face, but if you want to add a little bit of highlight to your palm, do it strategically. Add little bits of that white, really, really softly here and there, wherever you think. A little bit of light, like just be facing that sun and catching it just a little bit. Don't be afraid to bounce your brush a little bit and get just a tiny bit of highlight. You don't want a ton, just enough to make it sparkle. A little bit of shimmer. Sparkle makes everything awesome. All right, maybe a few here on your island. Not too much here in the background, it's a little bit further away and we're not seeing it as vividly. Okay. And to finish, remember that line we made before? See if you can find it again. And put a little bit of your sunlight coming down in almost like a wiggly line fashion. Okay, a little bit more of that sun here, a little bit of that wiggly line. Give it some bright sunshine. So what do you think? I think that came out pretty good. I'm really loving all of the fun elements, all of the techniques, and the colors that we use to create this piece. I hope that this piece whisks you away to a vacation, whether or not you can get away this year, at least you can paint your paradise. I think that's what I'll call this piece, paint your paradise. So I want to thank you guys so much for painting with me and having a good time and having some fun with paint. We're going to try to get some more of these shows and do a few of these paintings for you here on the fantabulous Channel 15. My name is Shannon Chiba. I am an Artworks board member and local creator, and I hope to see you guys soon, and happy painting!